These are the worst drafting NBA teams of the 2010s. So we all know that evaluating and drafting NBA prospects is not an easy thing to do. I get them wrong all the time, and certainly some of the teams on this list have gotten them wrong as well. We're going to go through what is, in my opinion, the 6 worst drafting NBA teams of the 2010s. Let me know down in the comment section below if you feel like I missed a team, if you feel like I misranked some of these. We're going to go through them all, though, in this video. But really quickly, before we get started, I do like to remind people, if you're new here, what's up? My name is Tucker. If you enjoy the content, consider subscribing. I upload NBA stuff every single day on this channel. It's the most consistent NBA content on YouTube. If you like the content, be sure to leave a like rating on it as well. It helps get the videos out to more people on YouTube. Really does help me out a ton. And if you want to hang out with me outside of these videos, you can check out a Linktree link down in the description below. With those things said, let's begin with number 6. I had a difficult time ranking a lot of these teams, but first up is going to be the Philadelphia 76ers for a couple of reasons here. One, there certainly are some significant misses. Evan Turner, number 2 overall in 2010. Michael Carter-Williams, number 11 in 2013, despite winning Rookie of the Year, has not been a very good NBA player. Jahlil Okafor, 3rd overall in 2015, among others. And even though I want to give them credit for getting Joel Embiid, for getting Ben Simmons, of course, they had probably more opportunities than any team in the 2010s as a result of the process of getting really good young players, and they really only capitalized twice. There's some other guys, that are decent for them, that became decent trade pieces, but ultimately, the only 2 guys they got out of this entire decade that have been significant long-term pieces for them have been Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and ultimately, I feel like they need to be punished a bit for that. They're not one of the truly worst drafting teams in the NBA in the 2010s, but they are certainly one of the worst, despite the credit they do get for Simmons and Embiid. They're kind of an honorable mention, though, here as we now get into the top 5. At number 5 is a team that I struggled with, and it's the Charlotte Hornets, okay? The most egregious miss on this list is Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, 2nd overall in 2012. He was a solid player, I guess, but never really someone that was super impactful, and they picked him right ahead of Bradley Beal. Think about how differently things would have gone over the last handful of years for Charlotte had they selected Bradley Beal rather than Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. Slightly unlucky there with the lottery luck, considering that Anthony Davis went 1 pick before him, but still they need to be, kind of exposed. They definitely need to have some points taken away for that. Cody Zeller, 4th in 2013 as well as a miss. Noah Vonleh, 9th in 2014, was gone after a year and a half. Frank Kaminsky, 9th in 2015, not a great one either. They get credit for LaMelo Ball already. I think it's pretty clear that's going to be a fantastic pick for them moving forward. But with all of these top 10 picks, they should have gotten somebody that helped them in the long term, and they got absolutely nobody. Again, one of those teams that kind of you could look at and say, well, if they got better luck here, or, kind of sucked that they were always drafting from like 4 to 10, but still, there are plenty of teams in this decade that got really awesome players in that 4 to 10 to 15 to 20 range. And Charlotte simply was not one of those teams despite having a ton of opportunities. And so ultimately, I think they're the 5th worst drafting team in the NBA in the 2010s. Number 4 now. The Minnesota Timberwolves. I considered having them significantly higher on this list. The only reason I didn't is because of Karl-Anthony Towns, because people forget that at the time of that draft, there was a real conversation around whether it should be Karl-Anthony Towns or Jahlil Okafor. At the top of that class, it was Okafor for most of the college season, and then throughout the draft process, it became more and more clear that it should be Karl-Anthony Towns, and being able to decipher that between those 2 players and the different outcomes of those 2 players' careers, I do want to give them credit for that and for selecting Karl-Anthony Towns over D'Angelo Russell as well, who went 2nd overall. Having said that, Wes Johnson, 4th in 2010. Derek Williams, 2nd in 2011. Shabazz Muhammad, 14th in 2013, or I only put on there just because he did basically nothing. And Chris Dunn, 5th in 2016. All of those are significant misses, and when you look at the draft history of the Minnesota Timberwolves throughout this past decade, despite, again, plenty of opportunities, which I think needs to come into play here. It's not just misses, it's the quantity of misses and the quantity of opportunities you had to potentially get good players. The Timberwolves did not take advantage of pretty much any of those opportunities, with the exception of Karl-Anthony Towns being selected first over the likes of D'Angelo Russell and Jahlil Okafor. So I give them some credit for that, but ultimately that has not been a very good drafting decade at all for Minnesota. Now we get to the top 3, and personally, I feel like these 3 teams are kind of in a category of their own. First up is the Cleveland Cavaliers. It might seem a little bit odd, right? Because they got Kyrie Irving more recently, Colin Sexton, Darius Garland. You get some credit for those guys. But they have 2 of the worst misses of the decade. It's not even close, and that is why they're number 3. If you want to make an argument for them to be behind Minnesota or maybe even behind some of the other teams on the list, that's fine. But Dion Waiters, fourth in 2012, did nothing for them. He had some moments on other teams, but Dion Waiters did nothing, okay? And Anthony Bennett, first overall in 2013, is arguably the worst first overall draft pick in league history because it was not an injury situation like Greg Oden, where the guy just could not get healthy but clearly had talent. Anthony Bennett, from the minute that he showed up in the NBA, it became clear that he just was not an NBA guy. He didn't want to put in the work. He didn't have the skill set. He never should have been a first overall pick. Arguably, at the time, he shouldn't even have been a top 10 pick. And now looking back, of course, on that draft, he shouldn't even have been drafted. The absolute zero of an impact that Anthony Bennett had in the NBA and on the Cleveland Cavaliers puts them as the third worst drafting team of the decade for me, despite drafting Kyrie Irving in that decade and Colin Sexton, Darius Garland more recently as well. I have to penalize them heavily and severely for the Dion Waiters and Anthony Bennett selections. If you want to make an argument against that, I would absolutely listen. But for me, that's where those guys need to go. Now we get into the top two. I struggled to figure out where to put each of these teams within this in terms of who should be one and who should be two. Number two, I'm going to go with the Phoenix Suns. And I know it seems weird. I get it. They got Devin Booker, right? Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges. They get credit for that, okay? But when you just look at the sheer quantity of mistakes that they've made in this decade in the NBA draft, it's kind of ridiculous to see all spelled out here. Kendall Marshall, 12th in 2012, only lasted 4 years in the league as a lottery pick. Alex Len, 5th in 2013, no impact on the team. Same thing for Dragan Bender and Marquise Chris, who were drafted 4th and 5th in 2016. Josh Jackson, 4th in 2017. DeAndre Ayton being selected over Luka Doncic. You can say whatever you want about DeAndre Ayton. You can talk about the potential that he has. Luka's an MVP caliber player in year 3, and they took DeAndre Ayton over him. It's a miss. It's a mistake. And this Jalen Smith pick most recently doesn't look great either. I'm not necessarily penalizing them for that, but when you look at between 2012 and 2017, okay, to have 4 different top 5 picks, 5 different lottery picks, and not get a single quality player. Josh Jackson was traded. Marquise Chris and Dragan Bender lasted basically no time. Alex Len was moved. Kendall Marshall did nothing. It's not just missing, but missing to the degree that they did with as many opportunities as they did is a huge, huge negative, and I am penalizing them pretty severely as well for the DeAndre Ayton selection as well. And it's weird to have Phoenix on this list because of Devin Booker, because of Cam Johnson, because of Mikal Bridges, because this is a team that right now has one of the best records in the entire Western Conference, but still, they have to be penalized for the amount of misses they've had in the draft, and the only reason they really started to turn their team around recently is because of the development of Devin Booker, the addition of Chris Paul, and a little bit of DeAndre Ayton stuff in there as well, in addition to bringing in Monty Williams as head coach. It doesn't have a ton to do with their overall draft record in this most recent decade, and ultimately it is a very, very poor record in the draft in this decade. Clearly, one of the worst drafting teams of the 2010s. The other team that I couldn't really figure out where to put here in terms of 1 or 2, ultimately, they ended up as the worst drafting team of the 2010s as the Sacramento Kings. Here's the reasoning, okay? It's similar to the Suns in terms of a lot of misses early on in the draft, but I just feel like these guys got even less out of the picks that they had, and as talented as someone like De'Aaron Fox is, he's not on the same level as Devin Booker, nor was he selected as late in the draft as Booker, so ultimately that just wasn't as good of a pick. It was a good pick, but they don't get as many points as the Suns do for getting Booker late in the lottery. Jimmer Fredette, 10th in 2011, not a great selection. Thomas Robinson, 5th in 2012, almost Anthony Bennett-like in his limited impact on the NBA. Ben McLemore, 7th in 2013, not a good selection. Nick Scalise, 8th in 2014. Willie Cauley-Stein, 6th in 2015. And again, just like the Suns, selecting Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic. Marvin Bagley is a worse player than DeAndre Ayton, and he was selected over Luka. Double negative points there for Sacramento. Now, they do get credit for the DeMarcus Cousins selection, despite the fact that it was a relatively short career in Sacramento in terms of the number of years there for Boogie. And they get credit for De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton, absolutely. But ultimately, I'm going to give them... I just realized, by the way, that this is of the 2010s, and I've been giving some teams credit or taking away for a 2020 selection. It's the last 10 years, whatever, it's the same thing. Anyway, ultimately, I went with Sacramento. If you want to make the case that Phoenix or Cleveland or Minnesota are the worst drafting teams of the decade, I will listen. It just depends on how much credit you give teams like Minnesota for drafting Karl-Anthony Towns or teams like Phoenix for drafting Devin Booker. And it's also kind of relative to the draft classes they were in and how limited the value is. Obviously, they're a bust. Obviously, there are big misses here, but like missing on someone to the extent where like Anthony Bennett's the first pick in the draft and does nothing, compared to, you know, missing on someone like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who at least did something in the NBA and was at least a role player despite being selected immediately in front of Bradley Beal. For me, this is where the list ends up. These are the 6 worst drafting teams of the 2010s. I think there are some other interesting teams you could throw out here if you want to go with the quantity argument. Maybe someone wants to bring up Boston, which is weird because I've done a video like this before and I said they're one of the best drafting teams of the 2010s. But ultimately, I'm interested to see what you guys have to say down in the comment section of this video. Let me know where your rankings would be, where you would rank these teams. If you think I'm missing someone, it's possible that I completely missed on a team. If that's the case, I know you guys will let me know down in the comment section below. But with all those things said, that is going to be the end of today's video. I thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, as I said in the beginning, you can subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this every single day. It's the most consistent NBA content on YouTube. You can leave a like rating as well to get the video out to more people. And you can check me out at various socials and a Linktree link down in the description below. Hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.